Interview. Interviewer. Hello, good morning, Mr. Willie Wilde. I hope you're doing great. Let's start with a question about your brother, Oscar Wilde. First, I would like to know some stuff about his personal life. Interviewed. His name was Oscar Fignall O'Farrell Wills Wilde. He was born on October 16 of 1854 and died on November 30 of 1900. He was an Irish playwright, novelist, poet, and short story writer, known for his barbed wit. He has one of the most successful parallels of late Victorian London and one of the greatest celebrities of his day. As a result of a famous trial, he suffered a dramatic downfall and was imprisoned for 2 years for hard labor after being convinced of the offices of God's indecency. The scholar H. Montgomery Hyde suggests these terms implies homosexual acts do not amount to buggery in British legislation of the time. Interviewer. Awesome! I'm sure that your brother gave you some information about his book called The Happy Prince and Other Tales. Am I right? Interviewed. Yes, of course. Ask me about it, please. Interviewer. Why do you think he finished The Happy Prince that way? Interviewed. Well, he was a very romantic man. That is why he wrote this part. And he kissed the happy prince on the lips and fell down dead at his feet. Here he mentioned some stuff about love, but also death. That's the way he expressed his feelings in these stories. Interviewer. I love the way he expressed his feelings, for example, talking about the next story called The Nightlight and the Rose. What do you think about the way he starts the story? Interviewed. As mentioned before, I can tell that my brother was a romantic and a poet that loved to express his feelings in different ways. For example, here, she said that she would dance with me if I bought her red roses. Cried the young student, but in all my garden there is no red roses. We all know that talking about red roses is something about love, so let's pay attention to how his story ends. What a silly thing love is, said the student, and he walked away. It's not to have oneself as logic, for it does not prove anything, and it's always telling one of the things that are not going to happen and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it is quite impractical, and as in this age, to be practical is everything. I shall go back to philosophy and study Memphis. So he returned to his room and pulled out a great dusty book. He began to read. Here we can see a clear deception, but he expressed it in a poetic and calm way. I really admire him in an incredible way. Interviewer. Me too. I have the same feelings about your brother. He was awesome. Let's skip some of these stories and talk about The Devoted Friend. This title got my attention when I was reading because I don't know what he wanted to say with the word devote. What do you think, Willie? Interviewed. Well, this is something very interesting, but for that I want everyone to read this story because it is very interesting. For a little taste, I will leave you this fragment. He water. You will never be in the best society unless you can stand on your head. Read it, you won't regret it. Interviewer. I totally agree with that decision. You need to read this awesome book to have a taste of what Oscar Wilde liked to write for everyone. Interviewed. My brother was awesome, a man full of surprises, and his book shows his passion for writing and the way he liked to entertain people with an awesome habit, which is reading. Thank you for your invitation. I loved talking about my brother. Bye. Change the ending. The swallow noticed how the statue was losing more and more gold, and each time the statue was less strong. That was because the gold decor gave him life, and if the statue lose all of his gold, he would become a single rock. So the swallow decided to fly to the nest of her friends in the forest so that they could help him get gold ornaments for the statue. The swallow asked for help to all the animals of the forest to get gold. He hoped that the animals were able to find some gold and returned to see what they could collect when he asked for gold. The next day, the swallow spoke with the animals of the forest and asked for the things they found. But the only thing they found were stones, labels, branches, and wood. After seeing this, the swallow began to lose faith. He believed that he would have no choice but to accept the fate of the statue. All the animals in the forest began to lose faith, and the statue would ever be the same. Although an owl came out of an old pine tree, who was known for his great wisdom. They all stayed watching the owl, and he told them that not only gold is beautiful, if they wanted to, the animals could give life to the statue with decoration from the forest. So everyone was motivated and decided. They wanted to bring the statue back to life. They worked all night decorating the statue. And the next day, the town people realized what was happening. So they decided to help with what they had in their houses and stopped before sunset. By that time, the statue was beautifully decorated with everything they had found. The owl saw all of this at his big old pine tree, and he was happy to see that everyone was helping to decorate the statue. So he waited until the night, and when everybody was sleeping, he flew to the statue to put a diamond that he had for a long time on top of the head of the statue. The next day, the swallow spoke with the statue, and the two were very happy with what they had achieved. Both were surprised to see that someone put a diamond on the top of the statue. The town was no longer submerged in poverty. The joy found in every corner of the town, and so it was the swallow left there. To shelter from the winter, everyone was satisfied and could prosper thanks to the actions of the swallow and the statue. What many do not know is that the swallow did not have a great grand final, since as it was helping people for so long, winter came closer and closer, so it would not reach its destination. For that reason, the course of the swallow changed from one moment to the next. Since due to the cold, his wings froze, so he fell into another city and looked for a refuge from the winter. What he managed to do was take refuge on the roof of a small house, which he accommodated with branches and leaves, so he could keep warm almost all winter. Although he had to find out for food, so he flew in reach of food. But his flight ended, since he could not stand the cold and stillness, so he fainted and flew a few meters from the statue, and there died. The people saw the swallow when spring came. So the king of that town decided to make a statue of the swallow and cover it in gold. And from that day, the swallow is remembered for his courage and help people. And that's the end of the story of the Prince Golden Statue and the swallow that together changed cities and helped people. And all of this happened because they changed the way they saw himself and started looking to help the ones that really needed help. And that's important in every story. Preview of the story. It all starts with a Bourgeois family, a family that didn't have to worry about anything. Everything they needed was at their fingertips. This family owned a big city. They collected taxes and received gifts from the commoner. They were good. They fulfilled the duties of the kingdom. However, the king was already getting old, so his son would be responsible for the regimen and keeping everything in balance. His name was Romeo. He was a brave, tenacious, and a very selfish man. He always tried to be the best, whether it was hunting or doing some other activity. He was sought after all the women of the city and every foreigner. However, the time came when he had to find a wife and continue his father's kingdom. Romeo was taken to meet all the women of the nearby kingdoms. First, he met Sophia, a princess of the Andes kingdom. They spent time together, and although everything flowed as it should, neither of them felt attraction for the other. They ended up as great friends. They became friends with rights, which was very toxic when they were together. They had affairs and they even had a kind of unhealthy competition, which was about who could see the most people in a day hurting each other by using others as puppets. Even if they wouldn't admit it, the game was quite fun for them. Although this had an end, like everything in life, they did not finish the duty with their family. The prince had to find someone to take care of the kingdom together with him. He arrived at the last kingdom, the kingdom of Albaric, a tremendous kingdom famous for its traditions, possessions, and the use of magic. He met the princess. Her name was Galil, and just by seeing her, he felt a beautiful electric shock in his chest. This happened to both. The pupils of Galil and Romeo dilated when the simple gesture of seeing each other in a distance. Romeo decided to stay with her for more than a month so he could get to know her in a depth and spend time with her. They went on adventures together, partying and fishing. Everywhere they went, they were together. But even with all that and the great mutual attraction, Galil always stopped Romeo, sometimes took him away from her lips, and never allowed him to take her to bed or have an affair. Romeo was crazy, all women falling for him. He didn't know how to react. He didn't know what to think or do. One day, consumed by his egocentry, he looked for a woman in that same kingdom, a commoner he could seduce. He spent his days with Galil and his nights with the commoner woman. Months went by, and he continued in a kingdom with the same routine. Of course, the point came where the commoner fell blinding in love with Romeo, and also the moment when Galil stopped putting obstacles to Romeo. Romeo, disinterested in the commoner, told her that he did not need her anymore because he married Galil. The enraged commoner cursed him. The commoner turned out to be a witch. The curse said that greed would consume the family, and that at some point poverty and deprivation would come to his kingdom, and that even his son would be destined to a worse reality. However, the son of the marriage of Galil and Romeo would have a great gift to restore everything. The witch did not tell them what the facility would be, but if their son became poor of heart, the gift would be reflected. Years passed and the spell became. Poverty covered the kingdom while the bourgeois hid in their luxuries. The child was pure of heart until he grew up, when his gift came true, and he could talk to the birds. As you may know, the story will continue.